Hi everyone, and welcome back to the original adventures of Hank the Cowdog, Book 1. Today we're going to read Chapter 5, Another Bloody Murder. When we crossed the cattle guard that put us back on the ranch, I felt a change come over me. In town, I had just been another happy-go-lucky dog without a care in the world. But back on the ranch, I felt that same crushing sense of responsibility that's known to people in high places, such as presidents, prime ministers, emperors, and such. Being head of ranch security is a great honor, but also a dreadful burden. I remembered the chicken house murder. I still didn't have any suspects, or I had too many suspects, maybe. Maybe that was it. Everyone was a suspect. Well, everyone but the milk cow, and I had pretty muchly scratched her off the list. And the porcupine, since they only eat trees. But every other creature on the ranch was under the shadow of suspicion, except Drover. He was too chicken to kill a chicken. When we got home, I trotted up to the chicken house and went over the whole thing in my mind. While I was sitting there, lost in a thought, a chicken came out and pecked me on the tail. Ah! It scared the fool out of me just for a second. I snarled at her and made her squawk and flap her wings. That's another thing about this job. Every day, every night, you put your life on the line. And for what? A bunch of idiot birds that would just soon peck you on the tail as tell you good morning? Sometimes you wonder if it's worth it all. That keeps you going is dedication and duty. In the end, that's what separates the top echelon of cow dogs from the common rabble, whatever the word is. Anyway, the dogs that don't give a rip is what I'm saying. Well, I had nothing to work with, no evidence, no case. There wasn't a thing I could do until the killer struck again. I could only hope that me and Drover would catch him in the act. I decided to change my strategy. Instead of throwing a guard around the chicken house, we would use the stakeout approach. Stakeout is a technical term which we use in this business. Webster defines stake as a length of wood or metal pointed at one end for driving it into the ground. It comes from the Anglo-Saxon word staka, agen to the Danish stake. Out is defined as away from, forth from, or removed from a place, position, or situation. It comes from the Middle English ut. That's about as technical as I can make it. In layman's terms, a stakeout is basically a trap. You leave the chicken house unguarded, don't you see, and watch and wait and wait and watch until the villain makes his move. And then you swoop in and get him. It's pretty simple, really, when you get used to the terminology. At dark, me and Drover staked the place out. We hid in some tall weeds maybe 30 feet from the chicken house. Time sure did drag. The first couple of hours, we heard coyotes howling off in the pasture. Arr! 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 Drover kept looking around with those big eyes. I thought he might try to slip off to the machine shed, but he didn't. After a while, he laid his head down on his paws and he went to sleep. I could have kept him awake. Pulled rank and demanded that he stay awake. But I thought, what the heck? The little guy probably needed his sleep. I figured I'd keep watch and wake him up when the time came for action. Then I fell asleep. But the funny thing about it was that I dreamed I was awake, sitting here, standing guard. I kept saying, Hank, are you still awake? And Hank kept saying, sure I am. If I was asleep, you and I wouldn't be talking like this, would we? And I would say, no, I don't think so. Seems to me it's kind of a waste of a good sleep to dream about you talking to yourself when you're awake. But that's what happened. I heard something squawk and I said, Hank, what was that? Nothing. Are you sure? Sure, I'm sure. You're wide awake and watching the stakeout, aren't you? I think so, yes. Then stop worrying. The squawking went on, and the next thing I knew, Drover was jumping up and down. Hank! Oh, Hank, he's back! Murder! Help! ain't asleep. And right then my eyes popped open and I woke up. Dang the luck, I was asleep. I was afraid of that. We dashed out of the weeds and found the body south of the chicken house door. The MO, which stands for modus of operationis, which also means how it was done, we shorten it for MO, a pattern began to emerge. The killer had struck twice, and both times he had killed a white leghorn chicken. Hen, actually. Actually, that might not have been the critical point because there weren't any other colored hens on the place, but I mentioned it to demonstrate my deep thinking. And that goes into solving a case of this type. You can't overlook a single detail, even those that don't mean anything. But the most revealing clue was that the murderer had dragged the victim off. That meant it was for sport, not for food. In other words, we had a pathological killer on the loose. This was very significant, the first big break in the case. At last I heard it. I had an MO that narrowed the suspects down to coyotes, coons, skunks, badgers, foxes, rats. It hadn't eliminated anybody, and I was right back where I started from. I hunkered down and I studied the body, and it was still warm. Warm chicken. Oh, my mouth began to water and I noticed the rumble in my stomach. The fresh evidence was pointing the case in an entirely new direction. Drover, why don't you run on and get some sleep? You've had a really tough day. Oh, I'm awake now. Well, you look sleepy. I do? Yes, you do. Awful sleepy. Now, your eyes seem kind of baggy. Don't you think we should sound the alarm? Not just yet. I need to do a little more study on the corpse. My stomach growled really loud. Drover's ears perked up. What was that? I didn't hear anything. He waited and listened. I concentrated on making my stomach shut up. You can do that. You know, control your body with your mind, only it didn't work this time. My stomach growled again, sounded like a rusty gate hinge. What is that? Rigor mortis, I said. Chickens do that. Run along now. Get some sleep. We've got a big day ahead of us. Well, okay. He started off and heard my stomach again, and he turned around and he twisted his head and he stared at me. Was that you? Don't be absurd. Good night, Drover. He shrugged and went on down to the gas tank. Gave him plenty of time for him to bed down, get comfortable, snap at a few mosquitoes, and fall asleep. My mouth was watering so much that it was dripping off my chin. When everything was real quiet, I snatched up the body, loped out into the pasture, and began my post-mortem investigation. It was very interesting. I didn't hurry this part of the investigation. I labored over my work for several hours and fell into a peaceful sleep. When I woke up, it was bright daylight. I could feel the rays of sun warming my coat. I glanced around, trying to remember where I was, and when I figured it out, my heart almost stopped beating. I was lying in the center of a circle of white feathers, and several more feathers were clinging to my mouth and nose. My belly bulged, and Sally Mae was standing over me with a look of horror on her face. Hank, you're the one! Oh, Hank, how could you? Huh? No, wait, there's been a mistake. Well, you see, the chicken was already dead, and I thought, listen, I can explain everything. It must have looked pretty bad, and me lying there in the midst of all those damaging evidence of feathers. Sally Mae headed down to the house, swinging her arms and walking fast. I didn't know what to do. If I ran, it would look bad. If I stayed, it would look bad. No matter what I did, it would look bad. Maybe eating that chicken had been a mistake. I was still sitting there mulling over the next course of action when Sally Mae returned with her husband. "There, look, you see, he's been killing the chickens, your dog." I whacked my tail against the ground and put my most innocent face on. Loper and I had been through a lot together. Surely he would know that his head of ranch security wasn't a common chicken-killing dog. He had to trust me. But I could see that his face was hardened. I knew I was cooked. "Hank, you bad dog, I never would have thought you'd do something like this." "I didn't. It was a mistake. I'd been framed." "Come here, Hank." I crawled over to him. He picked up the chicken head, which was lying on the ground. I hadn't eaten it because I found the beaks are a little hard to swallow. He tied a piece of string around the head and tied it around my neck. "There, you wear the chicken head until it falls off. Maybe that'll help you remember that killing hens doesn't pay around here." They left, talking in low voices, shaking their heads. I tried to bite the string and get that thing off my neck, but I couldn't do it. I was feeling mighty low, mighty blue. I was ashamed of myself, but also outraged at the injustice of it. I headed down to the corral to find Drover. Instead, I ran into Pete the barn cat, just the guy I did not want to see. He was sunning himself in front of the saddle shed. In other words, loafing, which is what he does 95% of the time. The mice were rampant down at the feed barn, but Pete wouldn't work a mouse patrol into his busy schedule. It interfered with his loafing. That's a cat for you. He saw me before I saw him, and he yawned. A big grin spread across his mouth. "Nice necklace, Hanky. Where would a feller go to buy one of those?" You have to be in the mood for Pete, and I wasn't. I made a dive for him, and he escaped instant death by a matter of inches. He hissed and ran, and I fell right in behind him. I chased him around the corral. He hissed, I barked. There were several horses in the west lot, and they all started bucking and kicking up their heels. It was my lousy luck that Slim happened to ride one of them, a 2-year-old colt, as I recall, and he started yelling, "Hank, get out of here. Whoa, Sinbad, easy, Bronc." Nobody around here ever yells at the cat. Why? I don't know. I just don't understand. I gave up the chase. I would settle accounts with Pete some other day. I loped over to the gas tank looking for Drover, and he heard me coming. He sat up and saw that chicken head around my neck, turned tail, and sprinted for the machine shed as fast as he could. "Drover, wait, it's me, Hank." He kept going. I guess he didn't want to get involved with a criminal. I went down to the gas tank and lay down. Boy, did I feel low. I tried to sleep, but didn't much help. That chicken head was starting to smell, and it reminded me a lot of the injustice I'd felt and the situation. Off in the distance, I could hear Pete, and he was still up in the tree he had climbed to escape my attack. And he was singing a song, "Mama, don't let your puppies grow up to be cow dogs." Now, then he would stop singing, and I could hear him laughing. Really got under my skin. I lay there brooding for a long time, and then I pushed myself up, and all of a sudden it was clear that I would have to do it. They had left me no choice. I took one last look at my bedroom there under the gas tank and started up the hill. As I passed the machine shed door, Drover stuck his head out. "Psst, where you going?" "I'm leaving." He crept out and glanced around to see if anybody was watching. "Leaving?" "That's right, I quit. I resign." "You can't do that." "You just watch me. This chicken head is the last straw. I'm fed up with this place. I'm moving on." "Moving? Where you going?" "I don't know. West, toward the setting sun." He was quiet for a minute, and then, "I'm gonna go with you." "No, you're not." "How come?" "Because, Drover, I'm starting a new life. I'm gonna be an outlaw." The breath whistled through his throat. "An outlaw?" "That's right. They've driven me to it. I tried to run this ranch, but it just didn't work. I'm going back to the wild. One of these days, they'll be sorry." "But Hank..." Hank, goodbye, Drover. Take care of things. I'm sorry it had to end this way. Next time we meet, I won't be Hank the Cowdog. I'll be Hank the outlaw. So long. And with that, I trotted off to a new life as a criminal, outcast, nomad, and wild dog. And this is a picture of Sally Mae when she caught Hank. Tomorrow, we're going to learn about two buzzards, Junior and Wallace. And so until then, bye and be safe.